One of the other big stories this morning is this San Diego State thing from Dan Patrick yesterday. So, we've been pretty dialed on the Pac-12, Big 12 expansion conversation. And we talked to one of our sources in the TV industry last night who actually was pretty adamant that Dan Patrick has no idea what he's talking about. We told you when this story broke yesterday, and San Diego State Aztec, amongst others, like 4 people sent it to us. The issue with that story when we heard about it yesterday was it doesn't make sense that the Pac-12 is negotiating a TV deal, and before they do that, we'll invite San Diego State. That doesn't make sense because we know the way that ESPN and Fox have operated. We know the way that they've negotiated those contracts, right? Mainly that, hey, there's this agreement where, hey, if you invite new P5 conferences or new P5 members to your conference, we'll pay you on par. We'll pay you the same amount for that new team as we're paying you for your current teams. San Diego State doesn't fit that bill as a G5, right? So it didn't make a lot of sense right out of the gate. Now, it also doesn't make a lot of sense that San Diego State joining the Pac-12 is not an AAU school, a research institution, right? Right. Geographically, it makes all the sense in the world. So we reached out to sources across, our vast network. And one of our guys that has been really accurate about the TV deals, and I think if you've followed us, we've been pretty nails on that. He told us that that's not accurate at all, that San Diego State has talked to the Pac-12. They have verbally been invited to join the conference, but that no official letter of offer has been extended to San Diego State, that there is no pending announcement that San Diego State will join the conference, and that they have just had very preliminary conversations. But I was also told that the Pac-12 has spoken with San Diego State, as has the Big 12 have spoken. But I've been repeatedly told by sources close to this situation that San Diego State has let everybody kind of know we're going to be on hold for a minute. We feel like San Diego State has told people that they feel like they're in a really good position. And I would agree with that, which is why I've been saying they just need to bide their time. It's not that the Pac-12 is a step down or a bad move for San Diego State, because it's absolutely not that. But what it is a risk. And right now, San Diego State is in the catbird seat because that conference realignment is not at the end. It's at the very beginning, the very early stages of conference expansion and realignment. It's just begun. So if you're San Diego State and you get a phone call from, let's say, the ACC, or you get a phone call from the Big 12, or you get a phone call from somebody looking to cement their footprint in Southern California, you want to wait and get your best, highest offer in that. If you join the Pac-12 right now, you're taking a low offer. You know that because you're going to come in at less than everybody else in the conference. And you're not of tremendous value at this moment in time to the Pac-12. So San Diego State has pretty much told the Big 12 and the Pac-12, we want to hang on for a minute. And we already know that because of the pro rata agreement that ESPN, separately from Fox, by the way, there was some talk yesterday about whether or not Fox had the pro rata. Fox, from my understanding, what I'm told, does not have that agreement where they will pay on par for Big 12 members if they add new schools. But remember that I believe it's 60% plus, 63% I think it is, of that money is coming from ESPN. Fox is only in on the Big 12 for college basketball. They needed more college basketball inventory, and they got that. It doesn't make a lot of sense for the Big 12 today to add San Diego State. It doesn't make a lot of sense for the Pac-12 this week to add San Diego State. But again, my sources have told me that San Diego State and the Pac-12 have had conversations, and that the Pac-12, George Kliavkoff, offered verbally in a phone conversation to bring the San Diego State to the Pac-12. There's no paper chasing. There's none of that. They have had conversations. So, Jake, I was told that that's not quite accurate what Dan Patrick reported.
Yeah, and I mean, I have no problem saying that we've been pretty much spot on with our reporting on this. And I think that, our process for vetting sources and working with sources is really, on lock. And I think that that's why we only say things when we feel pretty good about the information, and we've been able to kind of, check into it and look into it. And I think that, it's no shade to Dan Patrick. I with all due respect, I don't feel like Dan Patrick has been on this topic a ton. Like, I'm sure he's talked about it, but like, as far as being out in front of it, he's not been somebody that has shown that he has great information. So again, I love Dan Patrick. The guy's a living legend in the industry, in my opinion. I just think that, this is much, to me, this feels very much like, hey, some guy told me this and I'm just going to say it because, maybe he's my friend or I know him or something.
Rudy Gobert, it's him or me.
Yeah.
Is what this feels like. I think it just, from a business standpoint, the Pac-12 is very hard to read. The Pac-12 does not do business like everybody else does business.
They do it in an irrational sense. They do it ass backwards most of the time. And I think that's what I'm saying. Like, college football is not hard to figure out. Like, the numbers have to make sense. A plus B usually has to equal C. Like, you don't go like way off into left field most of the time in college football with how things get done. So that's why I say, like, it doesn't. You wouldn't, just generally speaking, set San Diego State aside for a moment. If I just said to you, hey, a P5 conference, not talking about the Pac-12, but just a P5 conference is reevaluating its media rights deal because they're expiring, and as part of that process, they'd like to expand a little bit. And then I said to you, hey, before they expand and before they sign all that paperwork and they know the numbers, they're going to go ahead and add a couple of schools.
Yeah.
Does that make a whole lot of sense to anybody?
Well, and I think the other thing that you have to consider here is the Pac-12 is well aware of one thing, and I don't think anybody would disagree with this. I've been told repeatedly the Pac-12 is aware of their situation. They know they're in a precarious position. And it was described to me, as a parakeet on a breaking branch. Like, they know that branch is going to snap. And they're either going to move to fortify that branch or they're going to collapse and they're going to fall into the abyss of college football. And I think George Kliavkoff, for everything that he's not, George Kliavkoff is doing what he thinks is best for the conference. Are his actions truly best for the conference? I don't know. We're going to find out at the end of this, right? But it makes zero sense to invite a team while you're negotiating a TV contract. Yeah. And by the way, I was also told by TV sources yesterday that ESPN and the Pac-12 have not talked in about 10 days. So it's not as though there are ongoing conversations.
Yeah.
And the overwhelming belief from people I speak to in television is that the Pac-12 is a streaming league, that they need a deal with Amazon. And I got to tell you, I don't disagree with that. But Amazon has made it pretty clear that they're not in the business of buying the Pac-12 network, which is something else we hear pretty regularly. The Pac-12 has said, we're not in the business of buying the Pac-12, or Amazon has said, we're not in the business of buying the Pac-12 network, because from a business standpoint, that's not the model that Amazon operates in. They're a streamer, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't make a lot of sense for Amazon to be in the Pac-12 network business. I think what is eventually going to happen, based on what sources and other people have told me, and my own experience and opinion is that I think the Pac-12 is going to get a smaller deal from ESPN, and I think they're going to break some ground with a streaming partner. I am not guaranteeing you that's going to be Amazon by any stretch of the imagination. I think they're out for business to anybody that wants to talk to them. And frankly, I think one of the people that I would continue to watch is Apple TV. I think Apple TV is trying to do it better than they did it with MLS. And I think a lot of people, and I don't really know anybody that roundly supports the MLS TV deal. I don't. I mean, it has been a very difficult proposition.
Some shit happened.
But when you look at where Apple is in the landscape of this, they really only have one true competitor at Apple, and that's going to be YouTube TV. I just don't see Google and YouTube in a position right now where they want to get in lock, stock, and barrel with an NFL, a league. I mean, they already offer the NBA League Pass. They already offer you the NHL Center Ice stuff. Like, YouTube TV is where they are, and I don't see them taking some big leap forward.
Well, on that, not to cut in, but like the thing with YouTube TV that you have to remember is they don't need to do what Amazon and Apple are trying to do. Remember that. They already, because YouTube TV is saying, hey, we're essentially going to offer you a traditional TV experience. That's what we're going to do. We're going to show you Fox. We're going to show you ESPN. We're going to show you all your traditional networks. So they're going the other direction. They're going down the other side of the road here. And you got to remember that. Like, Amazon is saying, hey, we want to take your product, Pac-12, and we want to put it on our platform. YouTube TV is saying, hey, we just want to carry all these networks, and you guys can do whatever the hell you want to do, right? So that, to me, is the main difference between the two, and why Apple, like, I agree that Apple and YouTube TV do compete on some level in that space, but I just think that YouTube TV is sort of on this pedestal here because they don't have a need to negotiate with George Kliavkoff. You've got it already. And
I just think for most people, it's Amazon or it's not. I think Apple got a huge win with MLS. I don't know that it's going to be fruitful for them. I don't know that it needs to be fruitful for them. Apple is the largest tech company in the world, and frankly, they can afford the loss. When I look at the other competitors here, there really is only one, and it's Amazon. And I think the Pac-12 and Amazon need each other. Let's get your thoughts in here on the Pac-12 TV deal. Greg Hawkins says the way Monty thinks this should go is the opposite of how the Pac-12 executives have announced it will go. Expansion will be after the media deal. Well, I don't think that they should be offering anybody right now. I absolutely do not think, and if I misspoke, excuse me, I absolutely do not think they should expand before a media deal.
Yeah.
That is, in my opinion, a huge mistake.
That's what we're saying. That's what I was just explaining, that it doesn't make sense for them to be adding teams or expanding
not at all
before you get your media deal done.
And I think when you look at the Big 12's media deal, they were really smart in the aspect that, as we've been saying, ESPN is not going to continue to allow you to just do whatever you want with your stream deal.
Mm-hmm.
ESPN is going to take your third-tier rights. We've known this was coming. We've talked about the ESPN app. We've talked about ESPN Plus. You knew that, like, you look at BYU Sports is on the ESPN app. You look at their partners, their sports are on the ESPN app. You look at stuff like the Longhorn Network, that all goes away. And why does it go away? Because Texas is in the SEC, and who's got the SEC rights now? Mm-hmm. ESPN does. So where are we going to see those games? We're going to see them in the ESPN app.
That's right, T.
But the other thing that the Big 12, I think, fully understands is there's more money to be made outside of this deal than just what you're taking. It's not a one-deal town anymore. And when you look at the Big 12, I think the thing that they did really, really well is they listened to not only their membership, because remember, you have Brett Yormark, your commissioner, go and barnstorm the conference, talk to everybody in person. One of the big complaints with George Kliavkoff is he likes to do a lot of things over text and phone.
Mm-hmm.
Brett Yormark likes to do a lot of things in person. He's a travel guy. Remember, he came from Rock Nation. He's a guy that's a handshake guy. He likes to build relationships. That's not who George Kliavkoff has been, reportedly. And so when you look at the way that the Big 12 has done this, what Yormark has done is he went out and got everybody together, and they all talked, and there's been massive communication in the Big 12. They have all talked repeatedly and regularly about where they're going and what they want to accomplish. Everybody in the conference wanted to secure a short-range television rights deal, right? So now they've negotiated that deal. Where they are in process now is they're getting all of their grant of rights in order. Because again, remember how this grant of rights process works. It's not that you're just going and signing a deal, and Oklahoma State's already signed a grant of rights. That's not how this works. The conference is going to go and negotiate that deal, and then everybody signs on to it. That's the grant of rights, because in Oklahoma State, a BYU, a Houston, every member of that conference is granting their rights not to ESPN. They're granting their rights to the conference, who then goes and signs a distribution deal with the distributor. So right now, what they're doing is pulling everybody together. I have not heard at all that there is any kind of tribulation, that there is any turbulence amongst either the conference members or Fox or ESPN. I think they're pretty much in lock stock. And this is just going through that getting ink on paper process. Now, is that true? That's what I've heard, and we'll see if that plays out. But the one thing you have to remember, those who go out first generally can get that deal more quickly, unless you're the Pac-12, who went out first to their early negotiating deal and couldn't even get a conversation, and then hasn't still gotten a deal because I think everybody realizes, including ESPN and Fox, how vulnerable the Pac-12 is as a conference. So there's no reason to go and fight. And then you realize that the Big 12 seized on that. The Big 12 and ESPN, from what I was told, ESPN really aggressively encouraged the Big 12 to come to market sooner. They were having conversations. Brett Yormark and his new team at the Big 12 went to his TV partners, which I think is exactly the right thing to do. Go to your broadcast partners. Go to your distribution partners and say, hey, this is where we're at. Where are you? Are you happy with our deal? Do you like what we've done? Here's what we want. And ESPN encouraged the Big 12 to come to market early, which they did. And it worked out perfectly because Fox was able to say, hey, we're not in a place where we want 50% of your football package, but what we want is the lump sum of your basketball package, which puts ESPN in a place to say, okay, we'll take 63% of your football stuff. I think it was a perfect deal. It's 5 years. It's a short-term deal.
Yeah.
It allows the Big 12 to go out and bring in new membership. If you're P5, if you get a Pac-12 school, which is clearly who this is pointed at, Yormark has said, hey, I only want to expand if it gives me a new time zone. Guess what? He's already got the East, the Central, and the Mountain. He needs the Pacific time zone.
Pretty clear.
So if he goes to the Pac-12 and gets one of their or two of their or four of their members, he can get equal money, pro rata money from ESPN for that football stuff. So in my mind, it was a very smart way of doing that.
Yes.
Tom Basilius says Utah to the SEC. Why not? I just think it's an uphill climb. Why would they do that? Why the Big 12 is a perfect fit.
Yeah.
Regionally, travel-wise, betterment of the student, rivalry with BYU. It's just a really good fit.
Yeah.
Utah and TCU is a really good game. Like, there's just no reason to do that. The Pac-12, Boyd Lake said, has been in reactionary mode for a while. I would agree with that. They're playing defense, not offense. Brett Yormark and the Big 12 are playing offense, period. Utah to the SEC, one stop. Maybe not. I'm not a big fan of that. UNLV might be a better fit for the Pac, but for what?
Yeah,
That's
what's
a
the
doormat.
point? What's the upside?
They don't win.
Yeah.
They don't win. Tom Basilius says, wait, A plus B equals C? On some level. Gumbylicious says Pac-12 games are better off on Amazon versus Pac-12 Network. Oh, there's no doubt about
100%.
that. Pac-12 Network's going away. In one form or fashion, it's going away. It just won't. Greg Hawkins said, I think the opposite here. The Pac-12 will get a per-school bigger payout than the Big 12 because they took their rights to market and the Big 12 simply took their built-in extension. They didn't take a built-in extension. This is a completely different structure of a deal. A completely different structure of a deal. You look at how the rights are divvied up and who's getting what inventory. Just the Fox basketball end of this versus the Fox football end of this. I think it's a completely different deal. Honest to goodness, I do. San Diego State says, I tried to watch San Diego State play on CBS Sports Network YouTube TV on Saturday. Terrible quality while connected directly to my Xfinity router. Had to connect via my son's PlayStation. WTF, concerned about all stream deals.
Well, okay, hold on. That's different. So first question is, what's your internet speed? Number one. And this is the concern I brought up all the time. You have to have really high quality internet. Like you just do. You have to be able to say, hey, yeah, we in the studio here, I have no problem saying we have gig speed internet because we stream and and specifically we needed gig speed internet on the upload to make sure that there was never any issues or any problems.
Yeah.
So you have to have, I would tell you got to have at least 200 megabytes, a second to stream well on the download. You need that. So, and by the way, the other thing, not to get all technical, but you got to have a router capable of running that kind of bandwidth too. So
I was going to put our YouTube TV stream on the air, but I think if we do that, we'll probably wind up getting an issue. And now, of course, I completely botched that. But YouTube TV for us has been fantastic. It's been, in my mind, it's been really easy to watch. I'm flipping around on it right now. I have no delay, but we also have, I can tell you, having tested this just the other day, we're 900 upload and 900 download.
Yeah.
You need to get on board with this idea. And San Diego State, I don't know what your internet speed is, But you need to get on board with the idea that, and that's the screen I was looking for. Let me see if I can flip this around. Hey, look, there's Jake right there. Let's see if I zoom out and give you guys a look at our studio. That's YouTube TV right there. If you look at that, like it's streamed and it's not delaying at all. And I get all these channels and I get all this different stuff, and it's all because we have fast internet.
Yeah.
So YouTube TV is what our choice has been in this studio. And I think, frankly, I think it's worked out really well. If we're being honest about it, hey, how are you? If we're being really honest about it, it's worked out because we have really fast internet. But the thing that I say is that you have to commit to that. You have to be, in my opinion, you have to be willing to spend the bread to have good internet. We are, because it's our livelihood.
Yeah.
So it's not a matter of what we want or what you think you want, or I'm telling you right now, man, that you absolutely have to have fast internet.
Yep.
That's at a minimum.
And also in that comment, and this is what kind of makes me question, I'm curious what he'll say here, but when you talk about streaming through your son's PlayStation, that tells me your router probably doesn't have the bandwidth, because it's not just about internet speed. Your router has to have the chip in it to handle 2, 3, 4, 500 megabytes a second. So that's what I'm saying. Like if you invest in a router and you get good internet, you will never have issues. It just it's super reliable.
Yeah, you'll never have issues. So it's hard. Greg says, I just don't think any Pac-12 schools will move to the Big 12 anymore because the athletic money is comparable and it isn't enough to compensate for everything else. I think if you're a basketball program like UCLA, I think you would rather be in the Big 12 than the Big 10. But the money's overwhelming.
Dude,
that's
the Big 12
the scenario.
Is the best basketball conference in the land, bro.
But that's the scenario right there that we're talking about.
Yeah.
That's it without question. When you talk about the money is too much, the Big 10 money is too much. But if I look at an Oregon State, are you really wanting to stay and be irrelevant in the Big 10? Or in the Pac-12. Look at Kansas in the Big 12 in football. Are you telling me they're not totally relevant? Yeah, of course they are.
Yeah.
Like it's awfully difficult to believe that you can sit here and just run this thing where you don't have to consider the picture in total. And I think now the other thing that we're realizing is that you can make money on your Olympic sports. Not a lot of money, but you can make money on your Olympic sports. Now, if I'm Washington or Oregon, am I leaving the Pac-12 to go to the Big 12? Probably not. But if I'm Utah, am I better off in the Pac-12 or the Big 12?
I don't think that's even a question.
And let's say the money's level. Are you better off in the Pac-12 or the Big 12? You're far better off in the Big 12 if you're Utah, because you're going to play a higher level of competition. You're going to have a regional rival in BYU. And you're going into a conference that with your other sports, including basketball, you're taking a giant step up. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's inarguable. If you're Colorado, are you better in the Pac-12 or the Big 12? I don't know that it's even a question that you're better off in the Big 12. If you're Arizona, are you better off in the Big 12 or the Pac-12? As a basketball school, you're far better off in the Big 12.
Yeah.
Because in basketball, you can compete with the top of the Big 12. In football, hey, I love what Fish is doing in Arizona, but it's a long climb. All of this to say, if you are a Pac-12 school that goes into the Big 12, your rise is not going to take as long as it did when the conference started. I think I could make a big argument that you're going to be way better off in the Big 12. Boyd Lake says the Big 12 is a better conference overall when you consider all sports. Look at basketball, for example. But I think this goes back to the AAU thing with being a research thing. Like, how much do you think these schools care about, being like-minded with their fellow conference institutions? Because I think it's more than we give them credit for. I think when you look at the Pac-12, the majority of the schools in the Pac-12, I think, and it may be all of them, are AAU members. So I think it's awfully difficult to just write that off and say, and that's why San Diego State's not an AAU member, which is by the way, is a conglomerate of research schools.
Yeah.
That all have a certain standard academically, financially. It's almost like a I don't know, what would you say?
It's a badge of honor, essentially.
It is.
It basically just says that you have this official badge that, separates you from other schools. And I don't know all the little details and minutia that goes into it, but they're not, and they need to be. And I mean, honestly, you can go round and round with this conversation for hours. I think there's a lot of opinions that go into who would be better for the PAC or the Big 12, or like who would be better here or there. Like, I think, and it's a great conversation, honestly. Like, it's a great conversation, but I just think, these schools, the bottom line is the P&L sheet, man. Like, if being a research institution is going to help you be profitable, then you're going to do that, right? Like, if being in the Big 12 is going to help you be profitable, then you're going to do that. That's just how it works in this life, man. Like, I agree that you want to be in alignment with the other schools in your conference as close as you can, but the fact is that you have to be able to check some boxes, and winning is the biggest box you can check. But I think outside of that, like, your campuses, are you a research institution? Obviously, your geographic location is going to play a huge role. Like, there are so many factors in it. But I think when you boil it down, it all comes back to what's our time commitment here? What's our window in time that we have to be committed to this grant of rights deal? And then, obviously, how much does that grant of rights deal make us? Those two things are going to be everyone's bread and butter for making decisions.
Yeah, and I think just looking at, I'm pretty sure pretty much every member of the Pac-12 currently is an AAU member, which Utah is, Washington is. I mean, it's Washington State is not a member. Okay, there you go. There you go. In Oregon State, there's, with some exceptions. How about that?
Yeah,
most of the schools in the Pac-12 are Association of American University Schools. So I think that matters to people in the Pac-12, and I think that matters to people of higher learning.
Yeah.
Cam Harrison says, "I have fiber internet. I use DirecTV Stream. It works great." And a lot of people are talking about that. M. Morris says most games are streaming on regular YouTube. I would agree with that. K. Nuren says, yes, TV on your phone is the best. It works great. It's Xfinity highest quality router. Well, I also think that just depends. San Diego, I don't know.
Have you done a speed test on it?
Yeah,
I would just see what it is. And again, I don't want to get too far into the weeds here on routers, but I can tell you firsthand with all the routers we've dealt with, and that's the only reason I know about this, because we've dealt with router issues. The router that Xfinity or CenturyLink or Cox Internet in Phoenix or whatever that they give you, they'll tell you it can handle gig speed, but that doesn't mean that you're getting gig speed.
It's a huge issue.
It's a in my opinion, it's a big scam, and I've always been a big believer in trying to get your own router.
And we actually have this is how highfalutin we are. We went with an IT company that's local. There's a local guy that does IT here, and they have, all kinds of techs, and they offer you, for $10 a month, we pay them to be our IT people, right? But what we also did is paid them to install a network and upgrade our package. And what he was telling us is that we had, why can I not think of it? CenturyLink.
CenturyLink, yeah.
CenturyLink's our provider. Their router squelched our speed. We were paying for gig speed internet from CenturyLink.
You remember on the show, for those of you who listen a long time, you remember when we had those sound issues where the show would kind of cut out for a minute and then it would come back, and you remember all that before we made the big change, right? Where we were, we had the whole new setup and everything before we did all that. You remember when the show would cut out? That's how this conversation spawned.
Yeah, and so we called them and said, hey, we can't deal with this anymore. It's killing our show. They came out, he straight up said, it's the router. You have CenturyLink's router, and they're squelching your speed. So you're paying them for 1 gig, which means 1,000 megabytes per second. You're paying them for gig speed, but you're getting 200 sometimes. Other times you're getting 700. But when the sound dropped out, you're getting 50.
Yeah.
So they would squelch or throttle, it's called, your internet speed. So we contracted with these guys. They opened our network. They gave us a router that doesn't throttle our speed at all. So we get true gig speed. And here at Maverick Center, they have the exact same thing. So that's why we rarely, knock on wood, have any kind of issue with internet, because we pay for that. You got to do that. Yeah. You absolutely have to do that. Let's see. I see a lot of people commenting on AAU. Boyd Lake says AAU sounds like the Twitter blue check. No, it's legit. You have to meet minimum standards. It's like a certification, essentially.
Yeah.
You have to meet minimum standards. I mean, think about how quality the University of Utah is. Throw out the sports program. Like it's a big deal.
But here's the deal. Like for athletes, like in guys who are going to go professional and they're just there for a cup of coffee, they could care less about that. Right. Like when you get down to reality of the situation, like it applies like if you're a lawyer and you need to go to law school and you want to go to this one or that one or whatever, like you're going to look at that. But for, the 5-star freshman, playing for the running Utes who's going to be there a year and then go to the league, like they're not going to care about that. And that's my point. Like it just doesn't matter that much.
San Diego State's an R1 research institution with 12 to 18 months. That's from San Diego State. Yeah, we read that exact thing. We were researching it leading up to talking about this today. Because as soon as we got that information yesterday, about 7 o'clock last night, I guess it was, we started really looking into further instead of, hey, how do they fit sports-wise? Like, what's the fit of San Diego State? I think San Diego State's a great fit in the Pac-12. Make sure that you understand that. I think the members of the Pac-12 are snooty, highfalutin people who hold themselves in very high regard.
Clearly.
And I think that San Diego State, they're going to be that team that's going to look down. Jaron Eccles says, is the shoe wall up yet? It is not. It is not. It will be. It will be. But it takes time. Like we were in here we were probably in here 15, 16 hours over the weekend. Like rerouting cable, like because we got different cable, and once you build a studio like this, it takes time. You figure out what mistakes you made. So like one of our HDMI cables for our camera was not long enough, so it was pulling. So we had to completely take apart our cable management and reroute that cable, and we just did a bunch of stuff. And next, the wall where the sign is. For those of you who don't know, and I guess I can get you camera 4 over here and show you, like, this is the guest chair. But if you zoom out, you see like all of the different equipment we have. That sign there, that wall right there is going to be, it's going to have shoes on it. It's going to have a bunch of shoes in a design pattern and whatnot. So it will definitely be in that spot.